Julia, a young nurse, became pregnant by a man who lived on the street. Everyone made fun of her, but what happened next no one expected. She had no idea what was about to happen. It all happened when Julia was returning home from the clinic where she worked as a nurse after another tiring day at work. The environment there simply didn't suit her, even after a month of dedication. The routine was boring, always the same thing, and dealing with illness and human suffering didn't help her mood at all. Furthermore, the colleagues were superficial, they only talked about money and frivolous things. Julia, who had always been concerned with morality and compassion, felt out of place. She was anxious to get home, especially since it was late and she had been at work longer than usual. She dreamed of a more fulfilling job and more understanding colleagues. The dark and melancholic weather of late autumn suited her mood. As the last bus had already passed, she had to take the subway to get home. Walking down the subway stairs, she saw a young, thin man wearing dirty, worn-out clothes, leaning against the wall with an outstretched trembling hand, asking passers-by for money. Julia assumed he was homeless. She herself grew up in a poor family, without her father present. Her mother worked 3 jobs just to ensure the family's survival, just like many others did. The man aroused sincere sympathy in Julia, especially because he had a handsome face, with strong features. Julia took a few steps towards the man and, as she got closer, she was able to better examine his face. For a moment, she thought it was her ex-boyfriend, Antonio, for whom she had intense feelings. They had dated for a long time, but the relationship ended painfully. Antonio, she called, but the man only looked up briefly before lowering them again. Julia thought he must be embarrassed to be in that situation. This meeting was something she had been waiting for since they broke up, and now it was happening. Julia deeply desired Antonio, but her mother decided otherwise, constantly berating her about how he was not suitable for her, being poor and having no future. Antonio left deeply offended by all this. "What a meeting!" exclaimed Julia, overflowing with emotion. "Antonio, I knew it was you. I'm so happy to see you," she said, stuttering with excitement. "You are mistaken, young lady. Unfortunately, I am Miguel," the man replied, barely able to get the words out before turning around. Julia looked at him, intrigued. A bold idea crossed her mind. What if I take him home and tell my mom that he's my fiancé? And that he's going to live with us? Maybe then she'll stop interfering in my love life. It was a risky but exciting idea. "Thanks for the offer, you have a good heart." "You know, I think I'll take it. I'm freezing at this intersection, to be honest." "At least I'll get warm," the man agreed, cheering Julia up. Her world instantly lit up. She has always been an emotional person, guided by feelings. She never dreamed of a marriage for money or a rich boyfriend. For her, love and mutual understanding were essential. "So I'm going to tell my mother directly, this is my fiancé Miguel. He and I are going to live here now. He has nowhere to stay. You don't mind, do you?" Julia turned to the man, beaming, and invited him. "Well, what are you doing standing there? Come in, don't be shy. Make yourself at home." Her mother, irritated, intervened. "My God, my daughter, when are you going to stop bringing strangers home? This is a decent apartment, not a homeless shelter," she sighed sadly, staggering towards the bedroom. Julia instantly felt the pain disappear, replaced by a liberating shiver. The man began to slowly move towards her, becoming closer and closer, until her lips met in a passionate and skillful kiss. The girl tried to resist, whispering, "Miguel, what's going on? We're not just pretending to be boyfriends." "Stop it," she murmured softly, as he continued to caress her gently. "I thought it was just a game too, but I really fell in love with you, Julia. I want you so much. You're amazing. I've never met someone who affected me like this," he said, his eyes full of emotion, even though her mother's desire to see her with a rich man still persisted in her mind. The man took the words to heart, giving Julia's mother a look full of pain and suffering, before covering his face with his hands and crying silently. He didn't want to believe the cruel words he had heard. Would Julia be able to hurt him so much after all the love she had sworn? Perhaps. He felt petrified, his heart broken, unable to move a muscle. "Where can I find Miguel now? I can't live without him," thought Julia, full of hope of finding him again and clarifying everything. She ran back from the door and down the hall where they first met. Julia looked around, asking the homeless people and street vendors, but everyone just shrugged. It had been a long time since anyone had seen him there. For more than an hour, the girl ran through the streets, wondering if Miguel had left. Will he forgive me? What should I do? How will I continue living? Were questions that haunted her. Julia had no answers. Now, every morning and afternoon, she went to the same intersection where she met him, hoping to meet him again. Once, I even thought I saw him from behind, shouting happily, "Miguel, my love, I finally found you." But it was a complete stranger who turned to her, responding in surprise, "Ooh, sorry, I'm not Miguel. You must be mistaken." Julia, desperate, decided to take an irreversible action in front of her mother. "Oh yes, mother, I'm pregnant." "That's right. And the father is Miguel. And you kicked him out. Now your grandson will never know who his father is. I hope you're satisfied. This is what you wanted, isn't it? I'm not going to ask you for help, nor do I want you to mention it. Leave me alone, I need a moment," she said, before running sobbing to her room. Andrea held her heart and went to the kitchen to take some sedative pills, mentally scolding her daughter. "How foolish, playing with love, repeating my stupid fate," she muttered as she walked through the door. Calmly, Andrea suggested, "Let's have some tea and eat some chocolate or something. I always have something for these occasions." "Julia, you are going through a phase where you react very emotionally, which is normal because of your hormones. You need to try to calm down, go for more walks, talk to the baby. He can hear and feel everything. When you cry, he feels bad. When you laugh, he calms down in the womb. Believe me. When the baby born, all these problems you are facing now will pass and you won't even remember them." Julia was lost in thought. All Andrea wanted was to hug her daughter, kiss her forehead and tell her that she wasn't angry anymore, that she would be there for her and that she would never abandon her. But things took an unexpected turn. It was a day off for Julia, and to distract herself from Miguel, she decided to clean her room. She started by washing the curtains and windows. While she was busy cleaning, her mother passed by her room and saw her through the window, thinking that Julia was about to jump and do the worst thing that could be done, even though she lived on the 5th floor. She ran to try to talk to Julia, but she explained that it was nothing like that. That she was just cleaning her room. To Andrea, it seemed like her daughter was finally breathing a sigh of relief. Andrea went to prepare tea for both of them, as Julia needed to calm down more every day. Her mother recalled the times when, pregnant with Julia, she used to chew chalk wherever she could find it. The two laughed together. Now, Andrea was preparing to help Julia with the birth. She picked up an old, dusty sewing machine from her youth, searched her trunk for a piece of soft cloth, and began to reminisce about her youth. In just 1 week, her mother Andrea sewed diapers, dresses and hats. That day Julia had an intuition. All morning something stirred in his soul, his heart beat constantly. She was so distracted that she almost made mistakes at work and almost sent the wrong patient for X-ray. The head nurse scolds Julia all day. "What's happening to you? Control yourself. After all, what will happen before the birth if you're already on cloud 9? Stop thinking about that beggar. He won't give you any future. Think about work. This is yours. This is your livelihood. Concentrate here or you'll end up on the streets like him." When Julia returned home, he was there, with his story. "I'm not a homeless person, I'm the son of millionaire Crespo. Maybe you've heard of him. We have 2 airlines abroad. I grew up in luxury and wealth. I studied at an elite public school and graduated in economics at the University of Economy in England. I thought my life was wonderful, incredible. I felt like I was the happiest man in the world. But suddenly, I'm losing my mother, and even though I thought I had everything under control, I realized how wrong I was. I took away my documents from home. After interacting with many homeless people, I realized that many of them are ordinary, educated and cultured people, but with a disadvantaged fate. Meeting you, Julia, was the most memorable moment of my life as a homeless person. When your mother, Andrea, kicked me out, I ran to the train station upset. I caught a passing train and went 300 kilometers away. I was there, begging near the station as always, when, because of Andrea's foolish words, she planted the doubt in my mind. How could she do this? Everyone could see that they loved each other, but they argued like enemies. 2 weeks passed. Julia was in complete despair, sobbing day and night, regretting everything she had done. When he returned, Julia punched him in the face and closed the door in his face. I'm a fool, all because of my stupid pride. I should have humbled myself, hugged him, told him how much I loved him, how much I missed him, she thought to herself. But she didn't back down. Upon seeing everything he had done to her daughter, Andrea was remorseful and decided to resolve things personally with Miguel. She investigated where Miguel could be, got the company's number and said firmly, "This is personal and important, pass it on to Miguel," insisting that she be answered. "Who is she?" "I don't know any woman," replied the attendant. Even so, Andrea persisted. "I'm Andrea, mother of Julia Smith, Miguel's fiancée. Tell him I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to stay here until tomorrow, but I won't leave until he talks to me," he explained to the building's security guard. Who, sighing, finally agreed. "Okay, take her to my office now." In the luxuriously furnished office, Andrea felt uncomfortable. A strong man greeted her, and he noticed the concern in her eyes. He took off his glasses, twirled them in his hands and said, "What news?" "So, I'm going to be a grandfather soon? Call Miguel immediately, things are more or less clear now. I thought he was so discouraged and depressed lately." "No, don't worry, I'll talk to my son. The driver will take you home in a nice car. It won't take more than an hour." She sighed with relief after being attended to. "Thank you for not kicking me out, for listening and understanding. You are a calm and reasonable person," she continued. Then Miguel turned to Andrea saying, "You said I wasn't right for Julia and then you kicked me out. You said she was with me for fun but she had a fiancé. I was hurt. Last week I decided to approach her to make things peace. Instead of being happy and hugging me, she punched me in the face. Is it normal? And why? For a simple question, who is pregnant? Well, I have to make sure it's my son. You never know," she shook her head regretfully. The next day Miguel goes to Julia and Andrea's house. His mother answers the door. She treats him very well, apologizes for all the trouble she caused and makes him come in. "Good afternoon, Andrea. Is Julia at home?" "I need to talk to her," he asked, with tears in his eyes. They took Julia to the hospital. They called an ambulance half an hour ago. She had a stomach ache and was bleeding. What a tense situation. God forbid us from any harm. She was very nervous. I also wanted to go with her, but the doctor said no. But she needs attention. I hope to see her tomorrow morning," sighed Andrea. Meanwhile, paramedics rushed around Julia to administer injections and medications. Soon after, Miguel ran to the hospital where Julia was admitted. He gained access to her by claiming to be the father of her child. He approached her, knelt down and whispered, "Hi, my dear. Forgive me, I was a fool. I love you so much more than life. Don't say anything, conserve your strength and that of our baby. Can I put my hand in your belly?" he asked softly, caressing her. "My little son, it's me, your daddy. Don't be stubborn. Your mother and I love you and are waiting for you. I need you," he cried. Julia was still unconscious and wouldn't have forgiven him yet. Now he had to leave the room. The doctor spoke firmly, "Visiting hours are in the waiting room. It is important to respect them. These rules apply to everyone." Miguel organized everything and Julia was moved to a more comfortable, separate room with a television. Still weak, she couldn't get up, so Miguel tried to be by her side whenever he could, massaging her, stroking her belly and making sure she had enough fruits, juices and vitamins. Her mother took good care of her and tried to make her happy. Outside the city, Julia felt refreshed. Fresh forest air, walks along shaded trails, resting on a bench, and sound sleep helped his recovery. She started to feel better, her cheeks were flushed, her belly was growing day by day, looking like a big watermelon. Miguel took care of her with great affection, treating her like a crystal vase. He was beaming, planning appointments at the best clinic for the imminent birth. He kept asking about her well-being and showing concern for the baby. When he was practically on the operating table, the doctor looked amazed at the last ultrasound and couldn't believe what he saw. Miguel, seeing the surprise on the surgeon's face, asked, "What's the problem?" The doctor, not knowing how to deliver the news, says, "But after all, what's the problem? That explains why your baby is so small and so fussy. Her belly is already huge and we didn't understand why, and now we discovered there are two," says the gynecologist. "Will I be able to give birth naturally, or will I need a cesarean section?" says Julia. "Ah, that's one of women's typical fears. Of course you can give birth naturally. All of his vital signs are normal, his pelvis is wide. We will be here to help you. You only need to go to the hospital a week beforehand as it is a twin birth. Trust me, everything will go well," he assured. When the two crying babies were handed over to her, the tears of happiness came. The emotions at that moment were overwhelming. Julia felt like the most blessed woman in the world. Soon Andrea approached her and said gently, "Remember what I promised you? That when you became a mother, the happiness would be so immense that all other problems and worries would become insignificant." Julia, looking at her newborn babies, felt an absolute and transcendent love. It was as if all the suffering and uncertainty that had marked her history up to that point simply dissolved in the face of the purity and innocence of these two little lives, which now depended completely and exclusively on her. Miguel was next to her, holding her hand affectionately, sharing the same intense emotion. It was a moment that seemed frozen in time, where all previous worries and challenges disappeared in the face of the wonder and beauty of the newly arrived life. For Julia, every look, smile and movement of her children was a gift, a confirmation of the miracle of existence. She knew that she would now have challenges as a mother, but she would also be filled with countless moments of joy and learning. As she held her babies in her arms, Julia felt deep gratitude for all the support and love she had received along the way. From Miguel's compassion to his mother's loving care. Most of all, she was grateful to have the opportunity to witness the miracle of life and experience the unconditional love that only a mother can know. For Julia, being a mother is a constant learning process, but she finds strength in her children's smiles, in Miguel's arms and in her family's support. Even in difficult times, she finds courage in the knowledge that she is not alone. As time progresses, Julia understands that the true essence of life lies in the bonds of love and deep connection with loved ones. Despite the challenges, motherhood is an experience she treasures infinitely, as the love she shares with Miguel and her children makes every sacrifice worth it.